Hi, this is William Ramsey. Welcome to William Ramsey Investigates. On tonight's show, I have a very special guest. He goes by Joe from the Carolinas. He has a YouTube channel, and he's been covering and investigating what he calls the AB paranormal, and he can explain that. But and really following some very interesting characters in the paranormal slash ufology field. A couple guys by the name of David Wilcock and Corey Goode, who we'll talk about, and maybe cover some other characters as well. But Joe, are you there?
I am here.
Awesome.
It's nice to be with you, William.
Yeah, thanks for agreeing to the interview. So, I've spent the last couple days going through your archives on your YouTube channel, Joe from the Carolinas, and just kind of covering some of these interesting things. And something actually popped up yesterday, which we can cover as well, which is this To the Stars Academy by DeYoung from Blink-182. This whole saga is also taking place, and we can talk about that. But for people who haven't heard your name, Joe from the Carolinas, can you tell me or tell us a little bit about your background?
Sure thing. So I got into this whole coming out and sharing my mind with people and YouTube, just kind of working out in the fields as an organic micro farmer and doing sustainability stuff, and also being kind of a full-time critical thinker. You know, I got so many letters after my name, I forgot them all. and so I started watching this program, Cosmic Disclosure, and it kind of started me off on rekindling my interest in the abnormal, the paranormal, and just this brief normal. And I just mash them all together, and I'm saying the ab paranormal. And what I'm really doing here is I'm really trying to look at the mysteries, the ab paranormal, with reason, logic, and common sense. I want to believe in some of these things. At one point in my life, I did without any proof or evidence at all. And now I'm re-examining everything. And so on the Joe from the Carolinas YouTube channel, as well as the Ab Paranormal podcast on Spreaker.com, I'm really going back to these foundations and looking at evidence and examining things in a very stepwise, methodical, and somewhat fair way. I try to be very mindful of bias.
Right on. How long have you been podcasting for?
I've been podcasting since 2013. I did my own permaculture, permanent agriculture-based gardening radio broadcast, and then I kind of pivoted back in 2017 and kind of changed gears.
Gotcha. I mean, so are you kind of one of those back to the organic farming type for part of that movement, would you say?
I was raised in this way, so I always tell people I can't help it because I was born this way.
Gotcha. Yeah, that sounds familiar.
I was kind of raised this way, and so it's kind of all I've ever known. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely something that's a big part of my life, and I'm always about efficiency.
Right on. So tell us a little bit about these characters, David Wilcock and Corey Goode, for people who haven't heard their names and what they're part of. Can you provide a little background?
Sure. Okay, so David Wilcock has been on the New Age scene for several years, decades, and he originally came into the kind of public light, this guy David Wilcock, by just being a very introspective, thoughtful person, being interested in advancing consciousness and tapping into what's called the higher self, whatever in the heck that is. And over the course of time, he runs some kind of Divine Cosmos blog, I believe. Over time, he's gotten a lot more publicity and attention, and he's been interviewing many people that folks out there might not be familiar with, but are really into more ufology, UFOs, and the paranormal, and kind of fringy conspiracy theory stuff. And Wilcock most recently has been the writer, and I think he's a producer and actor on a program broadcast by Gaia TV that's called Cosmic Disclosure.
Gotcha.
And so that's Wilcock's story, and I think he's also got another show in there called Divine Teachings or Wisdom Teachings or something.
Gotcha. So he comes out of the New Age, but the New Age has somehow morphed into the UFOs as well. I mean, I guess I don't know if that was always a part of the kind of New Age kind of outlook, but it's odd that that's now kind of melded together.
It is. Do you remember that cult that was going around a while ago, the Heaven's Gate cult?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, so there was like this merging of like New Age thinking and mentalities with here comes our ticket out of here. Right.
Was it Marshall Applewhite? Is that right?
Yeah.
And then was it Hale Bob comet? There was a spaceship behind the comet or whatever.
Right, it was either behind or within or something like it's craziness. Yeah, but see that's my interest in this, because I feel that as people that notice these problems, that notice how cults can get started and get out of hand. I mean, we're talking about real people's lives that are making choices that are not only harmful to themselves, but also harmful to people around them, their families, their friends. And so I think there's a line here where it's good for people to want to be inquisitive and be creative in their thinking. But if that's left unchecked, if there's not a kind of, okay, hang on a second, let's reevaluate kind of moment, things can definitely spiral out of control fairly quickly. And then we get into cult activity and the UFOs and the aliens are going to save us.
Yeah, interesting. Wow, yeah. So it's there's definitely like a sinister aspect to some of these teachings and how these guys are in. I mean, I haven't been following the Wilcock Goode story in great detail, but there was a contact in the desert thing that happened out in California where these guys were at a fairly well-attended convention, kind of spouting their ideas to the UFO community, right? I mean, I actually just saw recently, looking through your videos too, there was another one out here in Los Angeles that they both were attending that was this kind of melding of ufology, these indigo people, just a whole hodgepodge of new age kind of ideas out here. What was the name of that convention, the one in LA?
I believe that one was called Disclosure Fest.
Disclosure Fest, yeah. So now it's Disclosure. Now the real godfather of disclosure was Greer, right? That guy.
Yeah, so, he started the whole thing back in, I believe it was the year 2000 with his National Press Club. He had like 20 or 30 some people who, were willing to testify before Congress talking about moon bases and different interactions between the U.S. government and other governments and alien species or unknown craft. It's pretty trippy stuff.
And he did a documentary too, Greer.
Greer did a pretty gosh darn serious documentary. It was called Sirius with an I.
Right, but Sirius with the Sirius star has an occult provenance, of my understanding. Sirius is the dog star, and there's supposedly information that comes from Sirius. I think it's the star supposedly the star that the Masons worship is Sirius.
Really?
Yeah, so that's the dog star. Yeah, it's really crazy that he would bring that up. And an interesting thing about Greer is what I remember is the intro to his documentary, which didn't really, none of that information really stuck with me. I think he's questionable. But the intro shows a lightning bolt hitting a tree, which is a hardcore Luciferian symbol, not there by mistake. Jerry Bruckheimer uses the same type of display or symbol on the intro to all of his films. He's a huge producer. So look at that again. And then in the intro, they're showing Greer in this kind of gesture or pose, which is the same as Rodin's The Thinker. And it's pretty crazy that he would actually kind of send that non-verbal signal. Yeah, so Greer...
That's interesting.
Yeah, no, there's something heavy-duty about Greer, too, man. That's very suspicious. And the intro, he was on Joe Rogan, too. I mean, he's been around, yeah.
Oh, yeah. No, I've seen him on Joe Rogan. The interesting thing about Greer is even by his own report... He tells people that he allegedly had dinner with the director of the Central Intelligence Agency or somebody high up during the Bill Clinton administration.
So way back, like
20 years, wow. Yeah, so even if people really like Stephen Greer and all that, it's like, and I know there's many people that are big fans, short for fanatic out there, but it's like... Yeah, we might want to think about this kind of thing.
Yeah, there's some head-scratching stuff, yeah.
Things that make you go,
Right, and so then that brings us to Corey Goode, who supposedly is the prophet / messenger / spokesperson for a species of aliens called the Blue Avians, or the Sphere Being Alliance, right?
That's right. It's a commercialized extraterrestrial group, so they're I think they're working on their corporate charter. But yeah, it's the Blue Avians, and he is part of this whole Sphere Being Alliance thing. Now, of course, the way that Corey Goode, folks, ties into all this is Corey Goode is on the show Cosmic Disclosure with David Wilcock. So the format of the program is David Wilcock is asking Corey Goode, the insider's insider, all these questions, and Corey Goode claims that not only is he in contact with these blue avians or blue chickens, but he also claims that he has been part of a secret space program and he's been there for 60 years, even though he's not 60 years old. They have time and age regression, and he talks about all these just fantastical stories and in my personal opinion, ridiculous made-up nonsense. That in looking at what he says with the story of he gets taken out in the middle of the night, he goes out to all these far-off star systems in the secret space program fleet and meets all these aliens and negotiates on planet Earth's behalf. Yeah, and I'm thinking to myself, listen, you don't come up here with any evidence at all. Shouldn't you maybe go through a Senate Intelligence Committee briefing or something? Why are you coming out on Gaia TV, Mr. Ambassador? Have we vetted you yet?
Right, good point. Well, it's also a contradiction with his overt statement that it's secret. So he's supposedly in a secret, but I can tell you guys everything. Don't worry.
Right, exactly.
So it's like, oh, well, that's another. So, but yeah, so they're on Gaia, and Gaia has its own kind of strange background too. It was, I think it started out as kind of a yoga channel, and they must have moved towards where people's interest was, which is ancient aliens and UFOs, and get listeners is my guess.
Absolutely, and they were even manufacturing yoga mats and yoga blocks and all kinds of actual physical goods. And I'm not sure if they still manufacture those or not, but they changed the name from Gaiam with an M at the end to Gaia, which of course we know Gaia is a reference to a physical, organic, living Earth, right?
Wow, I didn't know that. So they were Gaiam at one point. Interesting.
Yeah.
Wow, so that's really new. That's heavy-duty New Age stuff, yeah. The Earth as a living organism, yeah. Wow, So have you been watching all of these Cosmic Disclosure shows, and what's the format?
Yeah, I've watched all of them. I'm not caught up on some of the more recent ones with Emery Smith, although I pretty much have his number too.
Gotcha. Who's Emery Smith? So maybe we can tell the listeners who Emery Smith is.
Emery Smith is a man who's come out recently claiming that he's another insider. And he claims that he worked at Sandia National Labs out west there, and he was involved in performing dissections on hundreds, if not thousands, of alien body pieces that were recovered by the U.S. government. And he also claims to have interacted with various craft that were of extraterrestrial origin and doing all kinds of unusual kind of communication exercises with the craft, and they're biologically based, and it's just very strange stuff.
Wow, interesting.
Yeah, and then there's this allegedly an underground train system that runs all the way from, I think it's like Washington, D.C. to Sandia National Labs, where there's all these underground bases, and he claims that he was kind of along this thing. He took this, I guess, on his way to work. Did he stop at Starbucks on the way? Did they have Starbucks down in the
Maybe they have a Starbucks down there. They've got them everywhere, right?
Yeah, exactly. And with Corey Goode telling us that the only way those guys ate when they were out there for 60 years in space through food replicators, which happens to be a Star Trek reference, you never know. Maybe you can get a double latte on the way out to Sirius.
Yeah, who knows? Wow, so these are pretty whopper allegations by these two guys.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that Goode is saying that he's been in a program for 60 years, and he's, 45 or 50 or something like that?
Something like that.
I mean, you're into, like, Andrew Basaggio territory, too, who's another person who supposedly took an elevator with Obama to Mars and fought dinosaurs, right?
That's right. An interesting thing on Andrew Basaggio, Well, all these guys claim that you can actually breathe on the planet Mars. That's But the interesting thing about Basiago is that he's an attorney.
Right. Yeah. No,
right.
It's strange. Listening to that guy is really bizarre because he has like this. The way that he talks, it sounds like he really is believing what he's telling you.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's really remarkable. Like that guy. Whew. But I remember seeing him. There's another New Age connection with that guy because I saw him with this lady who channels the god Ramtha. Have you ever heard of that lady?
No.
Yeah, so I think he actually got his start working for her, and her name. Let me see if I can remember what her name is. Ramtha. Jay-Z Knight.
Oh,
Jay-Z
yeah.
Knight is a New Age teacher. She has this spirit of Ramtha do it, and Basiago was either working for her or giving talks with her. Very, very remarkable.
Interesting. In the chat room here on the live chat, somebody says Jay-Z Knight is Judith Zara Knight.
Yeah.
Thank you, Michael Mayette. I think she's involved in the Mutual UFO Network. Maybe not, but I think I've heard that name associated with MUFON, which is interesting.
So she wrote a book, UFOs and the Nature of Reality, Understanding Alien Consciousness and Interdimensional Mind. So it's interesting that she's part of this whole UFO kind of thing. But yeah, so Basiago, Goode, Wilcock, and I mean these guys there's a financial element to their shtick. Isn't that true?
Oh, big time. I mean, it costs, I believe it's like $10 a month to even access the video portion of the shows that they do on Gaia. And, a lot of the conferences, they charge quite a bit of money to get in. And then there's that multi-level, well, if you want this extra, session with David Wilcock or Corey Goode, it's going to be, $40 extra to get into this one. And then you're going to learn more, and then you're going to learn more.
Interesting.
And yeah, and they've got a comic book out now for Cosmic Disclosure. They call it Comic Disclosure, which that's a joke.
Wow. You
know how much that comic book costs? The first printing that's autographed, $222. And I'm like,
wow, that's 1,000% profit. Holy smokes!
Yeah,
cost.
Why $222?
Oh, good question.
Right.
Well, I'm looking at their Contact in the Desert for 20. That's happening next year, 2019. Single ticket, $300.
Hooah!
Yeah, that's steep, man. Holy
unbelievable.
Smokes. 40 workshops, intensives, Above Majestic with Corey Goode. Films, so they've got a film coming out. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Well, another marketing campaign.
Yeah. I follow and have been friends with a guy named Randy Morgan. Do you ever hear of him?
Oh, sure, yeah, Off Planet Radio.
Yeah, so he has been following this too, and I think he reported that Corey Goode's followers paid like $8,000 to move him to Boulder, Colorado. Did you hear that?
Oh my gosh, that's still going on?
Did that happen?
Oh no, I know that he moved to Boulder. I didn't know that his followers paid that much. I know that Corey Goode himself came out on an interview with one of these New Age people saying that his followers apparently rented him and his family a house for a full year. That was when he was down in Texas. So I guess the pattern continues. Yes. $8,000.
8 G's, man. That's probably a good, some intense, moving, I guess.
Yeah. Sounds like somebody that's got to stay on the run for a reason, though, doesn't it?
Yeah. It's very, I mean, maybe he had to leave. I think he was from Texas, if I remember. Maybe he had to get out of the state. Who knows?
Yeah, well, I know that he had a restraining order on matter of public record with one of his former employers, and he'd only worked for them for like a couple months. It's kind of a strange story with that, and so I guess things kind of caught up with him or something. You never know.
Well, it's interesting you bring that up because it was after that whole fiasco at his job that he came out as having been a MyLabs contactee / Blue Avian Sphere Being Alliance, and they've supposedly Wilcock and Goode there's a secret group of enemies too, right? There's a nebulous, vague, dark alliance that is frustrating their plans, right?
Oh, yeah, like any good screenplay writer, David Wilcock comes up with this whole play the victim after he's away for a while. He kind of disappears. He plays his disappearing game, and then anything that's happened over the 3 months he was gone, it just plays into his little story, and what that is apparently he alleges there was some dark alliance that was trying to take his life and trying to make things difficult. But the alliance that's behind him and Corey Goode, the insider's insider, it's like the alliance and the dark alliance were at war. And the reason I think this was developed is because some of Corey Goode's track record started coming out on the internet, on some forums that he was a part of, specifically Project Avalon .net. And ProjectAvalon.net has a thread it's called The Truth About Corey Goode, and it illustrates, time and date stamped, all of Corey Goode's posts. And while he was a member there, this was after he was laid off from Darling, and you can see the progression of him being exposed, like all the threads that he browsed on and the topics. Magically, most of those little topics within ufology and aliens and stuff, that all magically got incorporated into his own personal cosmic disclosure storyline.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So somebody traced the provenance of a lot of these ideas then, huh?
Absolutely.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah, because allegedly he was also trying to reach out to some actual people that aren't trying to make money off of it, but they've had experiences they can't explain, and they were there to just kind of share that. And so apparently at one point the allegation is that he was actually reaching out to them and trying to contact them in private. Now, I don't know if that's true or not. However, I have it on good suspicion that if somebody engages in that kind of thing in the past, what are they engaging in now to keep the story going?
Right. Interesting. Right. I mean, well, you make an interesting point, because there's a couple things, like how are these guys agreeing and all these other people log rolling for each other, and how did Wilcock and Goode insert themselves into this whole ufology of people who seem to be more credible than them, people who are actually, semi-legit. But I mean, I don't know. I think that, some of there's people within the ufology world who've been doing it for decades, and then these guys show up.
It's interesting how that actually happens. I remember that when David Wilcock first came on the scene, he was associated with Project Camelot. Now, that was a project of Bill Ryan and Carrie Cassidy. And so with Project Camelot, they would go around and they would interview a lot of these folks that were having these experiences and just get them on camera. There's some really good interviews that back in the day, that was the only way really to see these people and hear their storylines. And this was pre-Corey Goode. Well, David Wilcock was part of that whole experience while they were, I believe he was living in California at the time. And so he's a very humble guy, insightful, introspective, and then for whatever reason, he kind of took off on his own path, started writing a lot of books, audio books, probably made a mint off of it. He's got this whole... Sorry, I'm getting Skype calls from other people.
That's all right.
So he's basically gone around and established himself, I think, as almost like a guru type, where anybody who questions him is labeled a hater.
Oh, I see.
Right?
So he's above criticism?
Apparently, right. And so somehow he got established with Gaia, and then that's where he's been sort of focused out of, that as well as his blog.
I see. Interesting. I mean, yeah, it's...
and incidentally, this is actually breaking news right now. I've just first heard about this through this broadcast, and I want to thank Chris at Den of Lore for this. Wilcock apparently resigned from Gaia.
Really?
Yeah.
Fascinating. So that's an interesting event. He's resigned from Gaia, and then yesterday there was an announcement from the To the Stars thing from Tom DeLonge. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, it was really a lackluster event. They said, it's this huge event, and the To the Stars Academy of Arts and Sciences, they're going to build a UFO, and they're going to build telepathic technology and brain-computer interfaces. They said the big thing yesterday on World UFO Day was that they were now accepting investments from people living in Arizona, Texas, and New Jersey.
Gotcha.
I mean,
So,
I was thinking maybe we get a new UFO video, but nope.
no, all it is, and so they're going to get a minimum investment of $200 for this kind of group that hasn't produced squat, to my knowledge. They haven't really done anything yet, and they've gotten their financial approval for those states. You got to go through each state to get the certain type of investors to be allowed. But it looks like on their website it's 2,500 investors so far. So do the math, 200 times 2,500. But
yeah, it's over 500K.
Yeah. So
and that's just if each investor only put in 200.
Assuming right, that's a good point. So, there's just so much going on with them. They have so this To The Academy is going to do aerospace, science, and entertainment. So they have and they put out. I think DeLong has put out 2 books. One with Peter Levenda, if I remember correct.
He did. That was Secret Machines.
Secret Machines. Did you read that?
I read the first chapter and then couldn't handle it.
It's fiction, right?
Well, that's what it's supposed to be. Mm-hmm. How is this reality disclosure?
Right. It's interesting. So they put out an entertainment fiction book written by Peter Levenda, most likely the author of the Necronomicon, who is a longtime occultist. And I mean, I can tell you stories about Levenda. Don't get me started.
Well, that's your area. I mean, right. I know. I heard something about he was part of some church was it New York that didn't actually have any parishioners?
Right. So there's this weird church that it's the Traveling Friars or something like that. That it's kind of like a pseudo Christian church. I think that he's a part of that. That goes back to some people were members of it in I think it was in the John F. Kennedy assassination. There was this weird crew grouping around. But Levenda I'm pretty sure he's an OTO member. He's a part of Crowley's OTO. And he was associated and worked at an occult bookstore in New York called The Magical Child with this guy called Creepy Herman Slater, who is a stone cold magician, And so he goes way back. So that series that Levenda's written, those 3 books come from his personal experience as an occultist, man. So it has a heavy duty. Oh,
wow.
So yeah, I mean, I'll tell you a story off when we get done with this. I'll tell you a story. But anyway, so Levenda's working with Tom DeLong. Did you see the picture of DeLong, Levenda, and what's his name? Who was Hillary's chief of staff for the campaign?
Oh, Podesta?
Podesta, yeah. Did you see Podesta, Levenda, and DeLong?
No, I'm going to try to pull it up.
Pull it up. It's an incredible picture. They're sitting there smiling and joking. And I think the other guy was one of the ghostwriters for one of the To the Stars Academy books. So
interesting.
Yeah. And
this is getting creepy, man.
Hey, man, I'm telling you, there's an occult underlying here. That's kind of what I'm learning, and that's what we're eliciting from our discussion. Is I'm looking at, the next thing. Levenda is attending this next, disclosure in the desert.
Yeah, and gosh only knows what goes on at those things. I mean, I heard this last contact in the desert that was in early June. They actually, a rumor, but I've heard that they asked people to sign non-disclosure agreements. So it's hard to even get video, even on YouTube, of really what was going on out there, what was said, what wasn't said.
Wow, that's remarkable. And I mean, these guys, George Norrie's attending. You got Coast to Coast people. I mean, incredible. It's Whitley Strieber, the original communion writer, who was also, when he in the late 60s, early 70s, he was hanging out with people from the Process Church of Final Judgment, I mean,
really?
Yeah. Oh, Strieber's got quite a background. I mean, it's really something else. And there may be a very good chance that there's a really good book by Jason Horsley called Prisoner of Infinity, where he talks about Strieber and about trauma and disassociation. That Strieber comes out of the fiction world, and communion is supposed to be real, but there's some real issues about like all the people he's supposedly talking to, and Strieber drifts off into basically New Age spirit communication and all this stuff that it's very odd,
You know what? It just kind of hit me just now as I was hearing the associations that you were making. You know, I wonder if it's possible that people on some kind of, I don't know, spiritual level or what have you. I wonder if it's possible to identify folks that might be more susceptible to mind control or behavioral control or conditioning. And so some of these movements being set up and then headed by some of these folks that are deep into this kind of ridiculous stuff that they take seriously. It's like, are they using people and recruiting people by saying, oh, it's the aliens talking to me, when in actuality it's another force altogether? Right. I mean, if there were aliens, where the heck are the aliens? Well, if we're going to have just, right?
Well, that's a great point. I mean, To the Stars Academy on its like front page has a picture of a the Atacama alien skeleton that already has been debunked, right?
Yep,
and that gets
absolutely
debunked. It's a fake. And so they're promoting it as it's real right in front of my face right now. And that's really at their front. If you go to the Stars Academy of Arts and Science, it's right there. So they're promoting this kind of fraud. And what are these people doing? So if the physical evidence is all fraudulent, what else is going on, right?
Exactly. I mean, if I've read the actual recent study that came out doing the actual DNA analysis of the Atacama skeleton, and one of the To the Stars members, Dr. Gary Nolan at Stanford University, as well as many of his other associates, and Emery Smith is on that paper as well. The guy in the underground bases and the ET butcher, and so. Right. What they basically said was that this was a human. This is a human being. This is a fetus that grew up in a heavily copper mined area in the Atacama Desert in Chile. And because of the environment and some other things, it had a number of very rare mutations, that 14 or 16 different mutations, and that's why it looked the way that it did.
Interesting.
You know, and they're out there touting it. Even Emery Smith on one of his interviews said, well, you know, I'm not going to say that there were eggs around, but, you know, it kind of looks like a bird.
Wow. See, I've heard that was cobbled together through cat parts of different animals to make it look humanoid. And I mean, there's a story that I've been told that somebody's research had to just be scrapped because it was totally debunked by a third party. Yeah. So, but it goes to your point. What's going on at these groups, and what's going on with these people, and what are they doing behind the curtain, right? How many of those people are members of an occult? How many are Freemasons? How many are in the OTO? How many are members of the Process Church? And what are they doing? Are they farming for people suckers to pay them $200? Are they farming for people to join them in their escapades? You know, what is going on? I mean, there's big questions, because these are, and what's the long term? Is this the thing where disclosure morphs into arrival? Or, I mean, I think they're talking about stuff like that, where disclosure morphs into the beings, you know? Like, oh, now we're in communication with beings. Strieber's flat out saying he's in communication with beings. They actually shoved something up his butt. You know, that was the providence. I mean, which is laughable. It's fun. It can be funny, but it also has a darker element to it, you know.
It's scary. Yeah. It is scary.
So if he's like dissociating and having these weird, you know, stories, and so here's another question I have for you. Yeah. What are Clyde Lewis and Jimmy Church, guys who run fairly sizable audience, you know, radio? I mean, I think Clyde Lewis is huge. What are they doing, you know, interviewing these people like as if their stories are legit?
I think that what they're doing, I'm not as familiar with Lewis. I'm more familiar with Church before I stopped listening to him. I think that what they're doing is they are trying to control the narrative, that they are essentially now that Art Bell died and some of the other big ones are kind of, I want to say, they're kind of losing steam, like George Snorri and those people. You have these kinds of biased, partisan interviewers, and they almost have zero questions about credibility, evidence. Why is it that we should believe you? Kinds of questions. And instead, it's like, let's just encourage the story. Let's just be interesting and understand. And so I think they're trying to make it appeal to younger viewers and listeners so that it looks cool, it looks hip, and they're turning this thing into something that they're now calling the event. Have you heard about that?
No, what's that?
Oh my gosh. The event is apparently groups are forming all over these United States and around the world. They're getting ready for the event. They don't know when it's going to be. What is the event? Well, they don't know specifically what that is either. Wow. They can't explain it in interesting terms, but it goes a little something like this. The energy from the galactic center in Sagittarius is going to impact the Earth, and it's going to cause a momentous ascension change experience. And the positive beings from inside the Earth are going to meet on the surface of the Earth, along with the extraterrestrials from space, and planet Earth is going to be a battleground for this ascension.
Wow.
Now that's their own story.
Interesting. And didn't you get somebody who recorded the Disclosure Fest just this last couple months, stating or heard Wilcock state that this ascension event, he gave a specific date that it would happen in 10 years?
That's correct. So one of the YouTubers, Positive Momentum, out there was live streaming that day at Disclosure Fest, went right up to Wilcock, and he was going to ask him to debate one of the folks that have been very skeptical of David Wilcock since 2015, openly on YouTube, a guy by the name of C.W. Chanter. Right. And so Positive Momentum goes up to him and he says, hey, David, when's Ascension happening? And just without a beat, Wilcock was like, 10 years.
Wow. I mean, that's like, I was just talking with somebody today about Childhood's End by Arthur C. Clarke that fits this kind of same narrative of the arrival and you know, man's ascension and all this stuff. So there's definitely an overlap of some science fiction towards, you know, their narratives. It's really something else. And you're right, though. I think that the comparison to Marshall Applewhite it's important because I think that there could be some real elements of abuse here by a lot of these guys. And it's interesting that this event is so vague and, you know, there's no defined elements to it other than Wilcock saying it's happening in 10 years. But it reminds me of the DeLong interview on Joe Rogan where he just like got to a point. He said, I can't talk about that. I can't, you know, I can't say that was the strangest interview. And when I was talking to some other people, they surmised that they might have paid Rogan to be on the show to access his audience because that was one of the strangest and kind of odd outliers of all the Rogan shows. And when they were on there too, like Rogan's like, they're showing a UFO and Rogan's like, that's a Frisbee, you know, or like he couldn't convince Rogan that these, you know, sketchy pictures and stuff like that were UFOs. And then the show, and I think it was a very short show. For Rogan, it was a short show. It was about an hour and a half. And then he's like, well, there's that. He just really couldn't kind of get on board with the To the Stars Academy. What were your thoughts about that DeLong interview?
Oh, I think that it was part of a media marketing campaign that To the Stars Academy was doing around that time. That's, of course, why I believe we saw a lot of articles in the New York Times and other big-time newspapers about this whole UFO interaction with the government in 2004, the Gimbal video and the Nimitz event. But I thought as far as his interview with Joe Rogan on the Joe Rogan podcast, number 1029, I really thought that things were going to go a different way and he was actually going to give us some specifics. And unfortunately, he decided that the way he was going to prove that these craft exist and they can actually build one was by going to YouTube, of all places, and pulling up just random videos, not even vetted, not even on the To the Stars YouTube page, just random people of these black triangular craft, which I think personally are military craft, classified. Mm-hmm. And he's pulling them up, and we're like, we've already debunked that video, dude.
Right. I mean, it was like also very amateurish for somebody who wants to raise that much money and has this kind of all-star cast of characters supposedly on board with him. It was pretty remarkable. I thought that he would have been much more polished than do that. and
Oh, yeah, and there was night and day between his experience on Joe Rogan versus the whole scripted unveiling, the initial offering, I guess you could say, of To the Stars back in October. Right. My goodness gracious.
So he had that whole press conference, and they were making announcements, right? That's what you're talking about?
Yes, it was a press conference that was in California, I believe, but there were actually no press there, and there was no audience there.
I mean, that's the thing. I mean, when you apply reason, logic, and common sense to almost every character within this, this genre, it's like there's real problems, man. I mean, they're cultists, they're loopy, they're New Agers. They don't have a lot of evidence. And, I'll be honest with you, one of the reasons I never really got deep into ufology 5, 10, 50, is I would start reading. These guys are just making stuff up. I mean, this whole ancient aliens is just a joke. These people have all this. I saw this one where clearly it's two-dimensional. Somebody made up. The pictures of aliens are fake. Really, one of the more remarkable things that I've ever seen is Crowley's communication with the demon spirit lamb, back in 1918, where he drew that clearly and memorialized it from 1918. This communion-style aliens, the same that Crowley draw 1918. So I find that, have you ever seen the lamb picture?
No, I'm kind of afraid. Oh, no, I have. I remember that. Yeah, I sure
scary,
have.
But it's remarkable that is, and if you want to trace all these people back to Crowley, that they believe they're communicating with the same type of beings Crowley communicated, then you're into not aliens but interdimensional entity type stuff. So, anyway, that's why I never got into ufology. Is the real lack of evidence and real reason, a lot of vagaries and a lot of dissembling and I was in my labs. I got no proof. I just believe what I say, right?
That's right. And what I think, William, I think that these people that are so, I guess you could say, out in the public light in the way that they are, and they're so propped up, it really discredits, and like you said, an entire field where people are, you're just average person that's interested is trying to figure out what is the truth, what's going on here. And I always say, it's like, I want to believe, but these people just make it so gosh darn difficult to believe because there's no logic here. Right. And the other thing is that just because we are critical or skeptical of some of these claims and we're drawing links to past events, that doesn't mean that people that believe in this stuff are wrong or evil or terrible people or interested in personal growth. But you got to have some watchmen on the wall here. Yeah,
I agree. Yeah, it's very strange. Have you ever thought that maybe this? And I've read there's a documentary about that there's actually kind of an intelligence or military intelligence putting out disinformation through the UFO community to obstruct actual real investigation into what the military is doing. Have you ever heard of that?
Oh yeah, okay. Absolutely. Okay. Yeah.
And there's have you seen that documentary that they actually?
It was called Mirage Men.
Mirage Men, yes, that's right.
Yeah.
Have you ever got that? I mean, in your inquiry into this groups, have you ever got the idea that that's actually real?
I believe that it is. I think that if you look at stories and how they've changed and how they've recycled, we're right back to spreading information that is very fantastical. There's no evidence for it. But if one were to design a behavioral experiment to see how can we get people to move, how can we control people's behavior based on a belief system, which is what mind control is. Right. Mind control, it's not a joystick driving somebody around. It's affecting their reality.
Right.
Yeah, if you can control the choices somebody makes, you don't need to control them like a joystick.
No, it's worse. It's worse. I mean, it's more effective. There's no palpable physical control. It's just all in your mind. Yeah.
That's right. And if you look at the documents that we still have available from MK Ultra from the 70s that weren't destroyed, I mean, they come right out and say that a couple, I believe it was 19-year-old girls, they decided to surreptitiously give them multiple personality disorder. They were giving people LSD back then in colleges, Georgetown University being one of them. And they just informed, in the 1980s, they just informed Georgetown, oh, by the way, right. We were testing all these things at your college without anyone's awareness, including the students and the subjects there. So I think if we look at that and we look at how classified information gets out to the public, how long did it take for us to learn that the government was flying around stealth fighters and stealth bombers? And those were all UFO reports? 30 years?
30 years, yeah, a long time.
Yeah. So what's to say that there's not a parallel program going on with behavioral technology? And the disinformation, disinformation is false news with a malicious intent. So where is it that some of these possible plants, if you will, intelligence operative plants, where are they guiding people and why?
Good questions. Very good questions. Where are they guiding people? What are they guiding them down just a cul-de-sac that they never can get out of? I mean, is that it?
Yeah, I think that it's like this rabbit hole. And once they guide people down this kind of rabbit hole where we actually just need to take it on faith that these people or these aliens or dimensional beings, once we take it on faith that they exist and we don't need proof, right, that the truth is very subjective, it's what I feel, then you get into that whole weird thing where, oh, this person is far more enlightened than you possibly could be, so you need to learn from that person. They're going to educate you on how to be you. And that's where it gets scary for me.
That is scary. It's really terrifying. How the images of these people can be changed by this group, and it gets scary when you see people experienced, magicians and things like that, like Lavenda in there. You're in a different territory. My studies into the occult, mind control is the handmaiden of Satanists. It's all about mind. A lot of that Satanism isn't just the acts, but it's the ability to make change in people without really them keying into that. There's always all these hardcore mind control. If you look at Damien Eccles, Hitler, Crowley, they're getting into people's minds and making them, change them to really a lot of it's submission to the individual will of the magician. So it's really a very strong trait of hardcore initiates.
Yes. Well, that gives me. Somebody in the chat room wanted me to ask you about if you have any comments on psychological operations and Aquino and Temple of Set.
Well, that's a fantastic question, because the Aquino and this guy who's on the media around, his name is Lafley or I can't remember his last name, but they wrote From PSYOP to Mind War: The Future of Psychological Operations. Have you ever heard of that handbook? No, you got to read this. It's incredible, because Aquino, and this is another example of what I just said, that mind control is the handmaiden of high-end occultists like Aquino. But this book was written, I think, 30 years ago, PSYOP to Mind War.
Okay.
I'm looking it up. So it's a literal, moving on to the next level, where it's Paul Vallely, who was around during the Bush administration, and Aquino was around, but that was from 1980, I think, was when they did it. But
wow.
Aquino was the head of the 7th Psychological Operations Group. But the whole gist of that tract is really just going from just doing psychological operations, but making war on the minds of people. It's incredible. So, and Aquino references The Search for the Manchurian Candidate. He references, and then and one of his famous axioms is in mind war there is no substitute for victory. So, and that's like
wow.
And that's actually comes out of the Book of the Law of Success is Thy Proof. Like that, success is you're supposed to win at all costs. That was something that Hitler said too. So,
and there was an occult thing with the Hitler thing too, right?
Oh, absolutely. Well, if you read some of my books, if you read, you can read Children of the Beast, because I liken Hitler to Crowley. They had very similar, almost carbon copy outlook, and Crowley famously said, and this is a play on a biblical statement. He said, "Before Hitler, I was." You know, and that's what Christ told the Sanhedrin. He said, or the Pharisees, I can't remember, but he said, "Before Abraham, I was." You know, so yeah. Oh no. Hitler knew a lot of stuff. He read a lot of. It's known that he read a lot of Freud's Psychology of Crowds, that book by Freud. So he was using these mind control techniques all the time.
Wow.
And, creating fake enemies. Everybody else was the real enemy except for him, who was really the real evil monster. But he always said that, the Jews and the Bolsheviks and blah 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 blah. So I do. Aquino from Psyop to Mind War. I would recommend you take a look at that. It's not too long, but definitely they're talking about atmospheric electromagnetic stuff, ionization of the air, ELF waves, just incredible. So, but yeah,
there's some technologies too. I mean, there are technologies. I mean, if we in mainstream science and mainstream medicine have access to a functional magnetic resonance imager, right? We can look at somebody's brain functioning and their brain waves and all the different neurons firing in real time.
Right.
What do they have in classified behavioral control?
Incredible
right?
stuff, dude. They've got all kinds of drugs. They've got all kinds of sound. I mean, they actually do. They can roll out these sound weapons to nullify, neutralize crowds. Right? They shoot sound waves at them. So I know people who have worked on sound waves to actually cause physical effects, to actually break walls and stuff like that. Powerful sound waves. So those exist, and the declaration of Trump saying that we're going to have a space, space-based part of the military. That's like 30 years old, man. They've been doing stuff in space for decades, bro. So
exactly.
There's an element of this whole core, Goode, Visaggio, all these Wilcock, these characters, that they're just distracting people from really other stuff that's very important.
Absolutely.
Whether they're doing it willfully, whether they have handlers. But I kind of feel in a lot of these groups, and if you look back into the 60s too, like Leary was being puppeteered. A lot of these guys, even in the anti-war movement, they're being puppeteered by intelligence guys in the shadow. So there may be within these groups, the disclosure groups, the contact in the desert, they may be being puppeteered.
And then the process is just recycled and repackaged to make it more, palpable by modern standards.
I agree. But then if you throw in the occult angle, these guys are making it more easy for people to be in contact with evil spirits. If you want to look at kind of that kind of angle, I think that's plausible as well.
Sure. I mean, if we get to the point where these event groups or whoever, they're getting contact with extraterrestrials, and the guru or whoever is saying, well, no, that's the green amphibians or whatever, they're from Xantar or whatever. It's like, well, how do they know that?
Right.
You know?
Where are they getting the script? I don't know.
Right.
Or are they writing their script? Are they doing? I don't know. I do think that there's just something very super sketchy about a lot of those people in these groups, including DeLong, and Lavenda, and Podesta. I mean, those Podesta emails are just incredible, man. So.
Oh yeah, freaky too.
Dude, off the charts. I've got a map. Who likes a handkerchief? These are all code words, pedophile code words, things that were never investigated.
It's spirit cooking. I mean, you wonder. It's like. Your average person couldn't get away with that.
No.
Even by mistake.
No way. No, these guys have legal coverage. They're not being prosecuted. I think that, what was the guy's name? Alephantis sent an email to somebody even before the whole story broke and said, we know we can get selective, we won't get prosecuted. So they had the lock-in through the system before even those emails were leaked, They knew. So, I mean, it's corrupt. There's a lot, and it's really dark. Really dark. So,
absolutely.
I mean, you don't know, like you said, you don't know what happens behind the scenes. You don't know what happens behind the scenes in the contact in the desert. How many, different curtains do you go through before, you're really in an occult level? I kind of got the feeling that there's an occult aspect behind a lot of this stuff. So,
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, the question that I keep coming back to, just from a reasonable standpoint, is with all of these claims being made by people saying that they're representing, planet Earth and they're speaking for everyone. Yeah, that's kind of dangerous. But the question that I come back to is, who are you without your story? Right. It's like there's no background given about any of these people.
That's a good point.
You know, we start an interview. It's like, tell us a little bit about yourself. No, they start a show or a speech, and it's like, okay, so we've got these aliens that we're trying to contact, and all you need to do is really just listen to me. I'm like, huh?
Right. How many of these guys show their CV? You know, does Corey Goode, does Wilcock, do they have a college degree? What have they been doing?
Not by choice. I mean, some enterprising researchers online have figured it out.
Gotcha.
When Corey Goode first came down on the scene, there was an interview I think that he had done with Bill Ryan at ProjectAvalon.net, and during the interview, Corey had said, "Yeah, so this is fine, and so Bill Ryan was like, "Look, this is the guy. This is the guy's story, okay?" And people came out and was like, what? Like people couldn't believe it. It's like, no, look at the evidence. And even today, they don't believe that Corey Goode had done all this investigative work and then taken those stories unto himself. I mean, we look at science fiction, Ender's Game, the infamous science fiction novel, now a movie, Ender's Game. It's like a little kid goes into a secret space program, does all kinds of things in the galaxy and
right.
It just repeats itself.
It's remarkable. Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing. So maybe who is Jordan Sather, and what's his story? I saw him. He was on a podcast. It was Greg Carlwood's podcast within the last month. So I listened to that. I haven't really followed him, but what's your opinion, or do you have any thoughts about Jordan Sather?
I do. Jordan Sather came onto the scene as part of the Gaia crew. Oh. So he was part of. Can you believe that?
No, I didn't know that. I didn't.
Yeah, he doesn't. He doesn't talk about it during some crowds. Now he talks about government conspiracies, and he's kind of a headline chaser. He's kind of, I guess, lining himself up to be the new Alex Jones, if you will. I wonder if there's any financial
smart positioning, right? Follow the headlines, get followers. Yeah.
That's right. A lot of stress, though. For somebody that's really all about love and light and enlightenment, that is a lot of stress to expose oneself to. But Jordan Sather was part of the Corey's kids. He was part of the young people that were being put out when Cosmic Disclosure with Dave Wilcock and Corey Goode came out first. He was one of the guys who was, let's interview Corey. And him and his girlfriend were there, and they were interviewing William Tompkins, who was this 90-something-year-old secret space program whistleblower, and they were hanging out with Michael Sala, who's I don't even know what he is. He's a doctor of something now, but he does. It's like this whole thing is all interconnected, and each one of the individuals in this Gaia thing, this movement, they all have these little tentacles going out almost like a spider, and each one of them has their little pockets of influence. And I'm looking at this and I'm saying, nobody's asking questions.
That's so crazy. Nobody asked him. I don't remember during that interview he had with Carlwood that there was a Higher Side Chats that he, tell us your background. Are you from Gaia? What's your Gaia story? Yeah. But now they're and this is another element of Wilcock, is both he and this guy Sather are covering Q, So
that's right.
Like that's the smart move to kind of, get some, and that's a whole nother story in itself. But
oh my gosh, yeah, for sure, yeah. And the QAnon thing with Jordan Sather covering that, he's actually gotten some, I guess you could say, some static from people who really have noticed that he is taking a very Illuminati stance, or for folks that don't know the Illuminati, there's a theory in conspiracy theory communities where there's a secret group of world leaders that conspire together to create events. And so one thing that Jordan Sather has been doing recently is saying, this false flag, if it's a false flag, is actually a good thing. And
interesting.
And that was brought up by C.W. Chanter on his stream. And so I produced the video with the help of other content creators, including UniRock. And the video was called Jordan Sather Taken to the Woodshed.
I'll have to check that out. Well,
yeah, it's pretty wild.
I don't trust anybody who has a drawing board in their background where they write things, because it's an infantilizing symbol that takes you back to grade school, and it's something that there's another guy, I can't even remember his name, but when people do that, I just go, whoa, don't make me watch that.
Exactly. Like, talk. Just tell us what you have to say. Exactly. And so the thing with Jordan Sather is that he has some followers that are fairly rabid, and anybody that ends up criticizing Jordan Sather, even on just the merits of his own words from clips from his broadcast, I'll tell you, they will troll you harder than any bridge you could possibly find in Iceland.
Wow, that's remarkable.
Yeah.
So he has a rabid follower, which is very telling. Some of those very rabid followers, a lot of them are paid. I mean, they're actually fake, trollers. It's the guy who I'm talking about, Glenn Beck, also makes people walk over to his chalkboard when he's writing stuff down.
Oh, that's right. Yeah,
so
Beck.
That just, I'm like, nope, don't do that.
Exactly. We don't need to establish this kind of teacher-student role.
No, never.
Let's have a conversation. Let's have, yeah.
I agree. Well, we're coming down here to the end, Joe, from the Carolinas. Is there anything you'd like to cover or anything we missed?
I think we've hit all the major points. The one thing, to just, I guess, close on is that just because somebody's calling the questions and doing the actual hardcore research, like William or myself, and again, William, thank you so much for inviting me on your broadcast.
Thank you.
It doesn't mean that we dislike people. It doesn't mean that we're trying to run these people down or insult them. And it's okay to ask questions, because after all, when we were kids, when we were in our terrible twos, what did we do? Why?
What?
Why?
How?
It's when when we stop asking the foundational questions, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah.
Who's in control of our thoughts?
Yeah. Well, I mean, and then this phenomenon is very unusual. It's not fact based, so it requires extra doses of questioning to try to figure out what these people are doing, what's their incentive, where are they going. It's really something else.
It's wild, man.
It's wild. Joe from the Carolinas, tell people where they can find your YouTube channel, which I highly recommend. Joe's really smart and really good analyzing a lot of these things. So I highly recommend people go check that out. Go subscribe to Joe from the Carolinas.
Yep, Joe from the Carolinas, YouTube.com. I've got Twitter at Joe from Carolina, and then I've got the little bit of a podcast over at Spreaker.com. Joe from the Carolinas over there. Best way to stay in touch with me and my content, though, is by subscribing and making sure you click that notification bell right here on YouTube. Joe from the Carolinas.
Yeah, he's got a great repository of a lot of the information that we talked in. You can learn even more in greater depth. So, Joe from the Carolinas, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you, William. You have a good night.
You as well. Take care.